The transport shuttle descended toward Galactic Council Station Epsilon 7, and Captain Hyunwoo Kong watched the massive structure grow larger through the viewport. The station looked like a metal flower floating in space, with dozens of docking pedals extending from its central hub. Each pedal represented a different section of the galaxy, a different collection of species that called the Council their voice among the stars. Hyunwoo checked his uniform one last time. The dark blue fabric bore Earth's diplomatic insignia on the shoulder, a small planet surrounded by olive branches. He had been a military officer for 12 years, but this assignment felt different. Escorting Ambassador Sora Choi to the Centennial Summit meant walking among hundreds of alien species, all gathered to discuss policies that affected trillions of lives across the galaxy. The shuttle touched down with a gentle bump. Hyunwoo stood and moved to the passenger section where Ambassador Sora waited. She was reading something on her tablet, her face calm and focused. At 50 years old, she had spent half her life in diplomatic service, negotiating trade agreements and peace treaties with species humans had only discovered in the last 2 centuries. "We're here." "Ambassador," Hyunwoo said. Sor looked up and smiled. "Good. I've been reading the briefing documents again. There's something I wanted to ask you about." "Of course. Did you notice the section about movement protocols?" Sora set down her tablet. "Every species that attends council functions must travel with paired escorts from at least 2 other species. It's called the Codified Partnership Protocol. But humans are exempt." Hyunwoo nodded slowly. He had noticed that detail, but hadn't thought much about it. Cultural accommodation, according to the files. "Yes, but what does that actually mean?" Sora stood and gathered her things. "I've been attending council meetings for 15 years, and I've never understood why we're the only species allowed to walk alone. Every other delegate moves in groups of 3 or more, always mixed species. We just walk wherever we want, whenever we want." The shuttle door opened, and they stepped onto the docking platform. The station's artificial gravity felt slightly heavier than Earth normal, and the air had a metallic taste. Around them, dozens of other shuttles were unloading passengers. Hyunwoo saw his first alien delegates and tried not to stare. A group of Veluxians passed nearby, their tall forms covered in smooth gray skin, their large eyes reflecting the station lights. They moved together in a tight cluster, 3 of them with 2 shorter Carusians in the middle. The Carusians had 4 arms each, and wore elaborate robes covered in glowing symbols. "See?" Sora gestured toward them. "Mixed groups, always." Hyunwoo noticed something else. As the group of aliens came closer to him and Sora, they shifted their path slightly, giving the humans extra space. One of the Veluxians glanced at them, and Hyunwoo saw something in those large eyes. Fear? Discomfort? The alien looked away quickly. They followed the marked path toward the main station, passing through security checkpoints and identification scanners. Everywhere Hyunwoo looked, he saw groups of aliens moving together in their required partnerships. A Thrancian with crystalline skin walked between 2 furry Kelphins. A floating gas being from Neftos drifted alongside 3 different species that Hyunwoo didn't recognize, but humans walked alone. The few other human delegates Hyunwoo spotted in the crowds all moved by themselves or with other humans. No mixed groups. "I asked about it once," Sora said as they entered a transport tube that would take them to the main diplomatic quarter. "When I first started this job, my supervisor said it was a special privilege granted to humanity when we joined the Council 200 years ago. Something about respecting our cultural preference for independence." "That doesn't sound right," Hyunwoo said. "Humans aren't that different from other species. We form partnerships and alliances just fine." "That's what I thought too." Sora leaned against the transport tube wall as it accelerated smoothly through the station. "But every time I tried to find more information, I hit classified walls. The reasoning behind our exemption is sealed in Category 9 files. Hyunwoo knew about Category 9 classification. It was the highest level of restricted information in the Council system, reserved for existential threats and species-wide secrets. Why would a simple cultural accommodation be locked behind that kind of security? The transport tube delivered them to the diplomatic quarter, and they checked into their assigned rooms. Hyunwoo's quarters were small but comfortable, with a bed designed for human proportions and a window overlooking one of the station's garden sections. He could see alien plants with colors that didn't exist on Earth, trees with silver leaves and flowers that glowed in the dark. The opening ceremonies began that evening in the Grand Assembly Hall. Hyunwoo stood at attention near the entrance while Ambassador Sora joined the other delegates on the main floor. The hall was enormous, with seating arranged in circular tiers that rose toward a domed ceiling. Holographic displays floated above each section, showing translations in hundreds of languages. Hyunwoo watched the delegates file in. The required partnership groups were obvious now that he was looking for them. Species stayed close to their assigned partners, often touching or maintaining physical contact. Some groups seemed comfortable together, talking and gesturing naturally. Other groups looked more formal, maintaining their proximity out of obligation rather than friendship. A Veluxian delegate passed close to Hyunwoo's position. The alien was speaking quietly with his two partners, a Carusian and a Thrancian. Hyunwoo's translator implant caught fragments of their conversation. Humans attending this year. Double quotes, always makes me uncomfortable. UNSHIELD mind. Hyunwoo's attention sharpened. Unshielded mind? What did that mean? The Veluxian noticed Hyunwoo watching and fell silent. His partners also looked toward the human, and all three of them took a step back. The movement was subtle but clear. They were maintaining distance, creating a buffer between themselves and Hyunwoo. The ceremony proceeded with speeches from various council representatives. Hyunwoo tried to focus on the proceedings, but his mind kept returning to those overheard words. Unshielded mind. Cultural accommodation. Category to 9 classification. After the ceremony ended, Hyun waited for Sora near the exit. The delegates filed out in their groups, heading toward reception halls and diplomatic lounges where the real negotiations would happen. Hyunwoo noticed that several aliens glanced at Sora as she approached, and each time they subtly altered their paths to avoid coming too close. "Did you see that?" Hyunwoo asked quietly as they walked toward the human delegation's reception area. "See what?" "The way they avoid us. It's not respect or cultural sensitivity. It's something else." Sora frowned. "I've always noticed it, but I thought I was imagining things." They turned a corner and nearly walked into an argument. Two alien delegates stood in an alcove, speaking in heated voices. Hyunwoo's translator struggled with their language at first, then locked onto the dialect. Cannot continue this way. One of them said. He was a Carusian, his forearms gesturing angrily. "The quarantine protocol has worked for 200 years, the other replied. She belonged to a species Hyunwoo didn't recognize, with blue scales and multiple eyes. Disguising it as a privilege keeps them compliant. But they're starting to ask questions, the Carusian insisted. The human problem cannot remain hidden forever. Eventually, they will discover why we truly let them walk alone." The two aliens noticed Hyunwoo and Sora. They fell silent immediately, their expressions shifting to carefully neutral masks. Without another word, they hurried away in opposite directions. Their required partner groups, materializing from nearby corridors to surround them. Hyunwoo looked at Sora. The ambassador's face had gone pale. "Quarantine protocol?" She whispered. What are they hiding from us? Hyunwoo didn't have an answer, but he knew one thing with certainty. The privilege of walking alone wasn't a privilege at all. It was something else entirely, something the Council had been hiding since the day humanity joined their ranks. And whatever the truth was, it scared them. Hyunwoo couldn't sleep that night. He lay in his quarters, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the overheard conversation. Quarantine protocol. The human problem. Questions that needed answers. At dawn station time, he contacted two people he trusted. The first was Minho Park, Earth's security attaché assigned to the diplomatic mission. The second was Ariam Han, a xenobiologist who worked in the Council's research division. Both agreed to meet him in a small cafe near the human quarters, a place where their conversation wouldn't attract attention. The cafe served food from a dozen different worlds, but Hyunwoo ordered simple coffee. Minho arrived first, a compact man with sharp eyes that constantly scanned their surroundings. He had been military intelligence before joining the diplomatic corps, and old habits died hard. "You sounded worried on the comm," Minho said, sliding into the seat across from Hyunwoo. "I am worried." Hyunwoo told him about the overheard argument, about the strange way aliens avoided humans, about the classified files surrounding their walking privileges. Minho listened without interrupting. When Hyunwoo finished, the security officer leaned back and crossed his arms. "I've noticed things too. Small things. The way alien staff members always find excuses to leave when humans enter a room. How our quarters are always in isolated sections of stations. I thought it was just prejudice, maybe fear of the unknown. But it's more than that," Hyunwoo said. Ariam arrived then, carrying a datapad and looking tired. She was young for her position, only 30 years old, but brilliant. Her work studying alien biochemistry had earned her respect, even among species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. "Sorry I'm late," she said, ordering tea from the automated server. "I had to finish some work in the lab before I could leave." Hyunwoo explained everything again. Ariam's expression grew more troubled with each detail. "The historical archives," she said suddenly. "The Council keeps detailed records of every species' integration into the galactic community. If there's something strange about humanity's admission, it would be documented there. Can you access those archives?" Minho asked. "Some of them. My research credentials give me access to certain restricted sections." Ariam pulled up files on her datapad. "Let me see what I can find about Earth's first contact and integration period." Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. Hyunwoo sipped his coffee and watched the other patrons in the cafe. Most were human, but a few aliens sat at distant tables. None of them sat near the humans. "Here," Ariam said after several minutes. "There's a section dedicated to humanity, but most of it is sealed. Category 9 restriction, just like you said. But I can access some lower-level files, incident reports, and medical records from the integration period." "What kind of incidents?" Hyunwoo leaned forward. Ariam's face went pale as she read. 12 assessment incidents during humanity's first 2 years in the Council. Each one involved human representatives being placed in standard diplomatic groupings with alien partners. Standard procedure for new species integration. And Minho prompted. In all 12 cases, the alien partners suffered severe psychological breakdowns within 3 to 5 days of close proximity to the human representatives. The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Hyunwoo felt his stomach twist. "What kind of breakdowns?" he asked. Ariam scrolled through the reports, her expression growing more disturbed. The symptoms were consistent across all incidents, regardless of species. The aliens reported experiencing thoughts that weren't their own, emotions that came from nowhere, memories of events they never experienced. One Carusian doctor described it as cascading neural feedback. Another report, calls it empathic shock syndrome. That doesn't make sense, Minho said. Humans aren't telepathic. We can't project thoughts or emotions. According to these files, we can. Ariam turned her datapad so they could see. But we don't know we're doing it. There's a note here from a Veluxian psychologist. Listen to this. The human mind projects without shielding. Extended exposure causes other species to experience the human's emotional and cognitive patterns as if they were their own. The human remains unaffected and unaware they are transmitting. Hyun-woo tried to process this information. His mind was broadcasting? All human minds were broadcasting? And they had no idea? There's more, Ariam said, her voice shaking slightly. After the 12th incident, the Council passed Emergency Resolution 2647. It established the solitary walk privilege for humans. But look at the original wording before it was redacted. She highlighted a section of text. It says protective quarantine protocol, not cultural accommodation. They quarantined us, Minho said flatly. Made it sound like a privilege so we wouldn't ask questions. They quarantined other species from us, Hyun-woo corrected, because forcing aliens to stay near humans was causing them mental harm. Ariam nodded. That's why we walk alone. Not because we're honored or respected, but because our minds are too loud, too aggressive. We broadcast our consciousness without meaning to, and other species can't handle the exposure. Hyun-woo stood up and walked to the cafe window. Outside, he could see aliens moving through the station corridors in their required groups. Now he understood. Those partnerships weren't just diplomatic protocol. They were protection, safety in numbers, a way to dilute and share the mental burden of being near humans. The fear in their eyes, he said quietly. When they look at us, they're not afraid of what we might do physically. They're afraid of what we do to their minds just by existing near them. Minho joined him at the window. This is why humans always get isolated quarters. Why our sections of space stations are on the edges. Why alien ships keep their distance during joint operations. We're not being honored. We're being contained. Ariam was still reading files on her datapad. Suddenly she gasped. What? Hyun-woo turned back to her. I found a partial file about the decision to contact Earth in the first place. It's heavily redacted, but there are fragments here. She read aloud. Contact approved despite psychological incompatibility. Unique properties may prove useful. Defensive applications. Recommend immediate integration under controlled conditions. Defensive applications? Minho repeated. What does that mean? Before anyone could answer, Ariam's datapad chimed. She looked at the screen, and her face went white. What is it? Hyun-woo asked. A message. Anonymous routing. Can't trace the source. Her hands trembled as she held up the pad for them to see. The message was short and chilling. Stop your investigation or discover why humans were truly let into the Council in the first place. The answer is worse than you think. The three of them sat in silence for a long moment. Then Minho spoke, his voice hard. We can't stop now. If they're threatening us, it means we're close to something they desperately want hidden. But what could be worse than learning we've been quarantined for 200 years? Ariam asked. Hyun-woo thought about the message again. Why humans were truly let into the Council in the first place. Not how, not when, why. They wanted us here, he said slowly. Whatever the Council discovered about human minds, whatever defensive application they saw, they wanted it badly enough to bring a species into their community that they knew would be dangerous to be around. They weaponized us, Minho said, without telling us, without asking permission. Ariam pulled up more files, working faster now despite the obvious fear in her eyes. I'm going to dig deeper. If there are more documents about this defensive application, about why they really contacted Earth. I need to find them. Be careful, Hyunwoo warned. Someone is watching our investigation. They know what we're doing. I'll be careful, Aryam promised. But we need to know the truth. All of it. They agreed to meet again the next day. Hyunwoo returned to his duties escorting Ambassador Sora, but his mind churned with questions. Every alien he passed now looked different. He could see the tension in their bodies when he approached, the relief when he moved away. They weren't being rude or prejudiced. They were protecting themselves from the involuntary assault of his unshielded mind. That evening, Hyunwoo stood at his quarters window and looked out at the station. Somewhere in this massive structure, in sealed files and classified databases, lay the complete truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. They walked alone not because they were strong or independent. They walked alone because their minds were weapons they couldn't control, broadcasting chaos and disruption to every telepathic species nearby. And somehow and possibly, the Council wanted that, needed that, had sought out Earth specifically because of it. The question that kept Hyunwoo awake that night was simple but terrifying. What threat could be so dangerous that the Council would deliberately bring humans into their civilization, knowing the mental anguish it would cause? What enemy required weapons so terrible that psychological contamination seemed like an acceptable price to pay? He had a feeling he was about to find out. Aryam worked through the night, searching deeper into the Council's archived files. By morning, she had found enough fragments to piece together a horrifying picture. She sent an encrypted message to Hyunwoo and Minho, asking them to meet in a secure location. The place she chose was a maintenance tunnel in one of the station's older sections. Few people came here, and the background noise of machinery would interfere with surveillance equipment. When Hyunwoo and Minho arrived, they found Aryam pacing nervously, her datapad clutched tight in her hands. I found something, she said without preamble. Something that explains everything, but I need help understanding what it means. I've requested a meeting with someone who might know more. Who? Hyunwoo asked. Another human. Someone who works in Council intelligence. Her name is Ji-won Ryu. Aryam checked her chronometer. She agreed to meet us, but only in a shielded chamber where the conversation can't be monitored. She's risking a lot just talking to us. 20 minutes later, they sat in a small secure room deep in the intelligence division. The walls were lined with technology designed to block all forms of surveillance. Ji-won Ryu sat across from them, a woman in her 40s with gray streaks in her hair and eyes that had seen too many secrets. You've been asking dangerous questions, Ji-won said. Questions that most humans go their entire lives without thinking about. I can tell you the truth, but once you know, you can't unknow it. Are you sure you want this? Ji-won grabbed Hyunwoo's arm. Wait, I need to explain what you'll face. When the Velshari try to possess someone and fail, like they will with you, they'll intensify their efforts. That means your mind will broadcast even more strongly than normal. Any aliens near you will experience severe mental intrusion, your thoughts and emotions flooding directly into their consciousness. Will it hurt them? It will be agonizing for them, but it won't cause permanent damage. More importantly, it will disrupt any possession attempts on them. You'll be a walking shield, but one that causes significant discomfort to anyone you're protecting. Hyunwoo nodded. Better discomfort than extinction. Minho checked his weapon. Let's go get our people. They moved toward the chamber entrance. As they approached, Hyunwoo felt something strange, a pressure in his mind that hadn't been there before. The Velshari were already trying to reach him, trying to force their way into his consciousness. But where other species had open doorways, humans had solid walls. The pressure increased but couldn't penetrate. Inside the chamber, the scene was nightmarish. Half the delegates had been possessed already. their eyes showing a strange unfocused quality as they moved with mechanical precision toward the uninfected. The other half huddled in groups, protected momentarily by their partner protocols, but those protections were failing as the possessed closed in. Hyun-Woo spotted Sora immediately. She stood with 5 other human delegates near the center of the chamber, surrounded by a ring of uninfected aliens who couldn't approach the possessed without being taken themselves. The possessed noticed the humans entering and moved toward them. But as they came within 10 meters of Hyun-Woo, they stopped. Their movements became jerky, confused. One of them, a Veluxian, convulsed and fell to the ground, a Velshari parasite unable to maintain control so close to human consciousness. "It's working," Minho said. "They can't get near us." Hyun-Woo moved deeper into the chamber, Minho covering his flank. Wherever they walked, the possessed retreated, creating an empty zone around them. But Hyun-Woo could also feel the effect on the uninfected aliens nearby. They gasped and staggered, clutching their heads as his unshielded mind broadcast at maximum intensity. Group of Carusian delegates fell to their knees as Hyun-Woo passed. One of them looked up at him with 4 eyes wide in pain and wonder. "I can hear your thoughts," the alien whispered. "I can feel your determination, your fear, your need to protect. It fills my entire mind." "I'm sorry," Hyun-Woo said, helping the Carusian to his feet. "But you're safe from possession while near me. Can you walk?" The Carusian nodded, though clearly struggling with the mental intrusion. Hyun-Woo guided the group toward the exit, maintaining his proximity to keep the Velshari at bay. Other humans were doing the same throughout the chamber, each creating a protected zone around themselves. Suddenly, the entire station shook. Alarms of a different pitch began sounding. "Fleet Commander Nari has arrived with Earth's emergency response forces," Jiwon announced through the comm system. "She's deploying human marines throughout the station." Fleet Commander Nari Song was a legend in Earth's military. She had commanded defensive operations across 3 sectors and had a reputation for bold tactical decisions. If anyone could coordinate a response to this crisis, it was her. Within minutes, human marines began flooding into the station. They moved with military precision, forming grid patterns that created overlapping protective zones. Wherever they positioned themselves, the Velshari could not operate. The possessed retreated from these human shields, and the uninfected aliens found sanctuary in the spaces between the marines. Hyun-Woo escorted his group of rescued delegates toward the exit. Among them was a Veluxian he recognized from days earlier, the diplomat named Threen, who had whispered about humans having unshielded minds. Now Threen stumbled along beside Hyun-Woo, visibly struggling with the mental pressure, but determined to keep moving. "I understand now," Threen said through gritted teeth. His translator made his pain evident. "Your mind, it pushes into mine like a storm. I see your memories, your training, your fears. I feel your determination to save us even though my species has feared you, avoided you, treated you as dangerous. You weren't wrong to fear us," Hyun-Woo said. "What we do to your minds isn't comfortable, but it keeps us alive." Threen steadied himself against a wall as another wave of Hyun-Woo's thoughts washed through his consciousness. "We made you walk alone because we couldn't bear the touch of your minds. We called it a privilege to hide our weakness. But all this time, you were protecting us without knowing it." They reached a secure area where medical teams waited. Arium was there, helping coordinate treatment for the aliens suffering from extended exposure to human consciousness. She had discovered that the effects were temporary, the alien minds recovering quickly once removed from direct human proximity. But Medical Officer Yuna Lim pulled Hyun-Woo aside with troubling news. "The Marines who are holding positions against actively possessed Velshari are experiencing severe strain. Their proximity to the parasites is forcing their minds to broadcast at levels we've never measured before. It's working, keeping the Velshari at bay, but it's causing extreme psychological stress for the aliens they're protecting. Hyunwoo saw what she meant when he checked on one of the Marine positions. Lieutenant Daeun Kyo stood in a corridor with 20 Thrantian delegates huddled behind him. The Thrantians were experiencing Daeun's entire consciousness, his memories flooding through their crystalline minds. Some were weeping, others stood in shock, all of them overwhelmed by the intensity of human thought. How long can they endure this? Hyunwoo asked. Unknown, Yuna admitted. We're in unprecedented territory. But the alternative is possession and extinction, so they're enduring. The battle continued for hours. Human forces held their positions, while the Velshari possessed tried to find ways around them. But the marine grid was well designed, with overlapping protective zones that left no gaps. Slowly, the possessed were contained, isolated, prevented from spreading further as night fell on the station. Hyunwoo found himself back in the council chambers, helping coordinate the final sweeps. The possessed had been pushed into sealed sections where they could be contained until council scientists found a way to remove the parasites without killing the hosts. Threen approached him, the Veluxian moving slowly but under his own power. Despite the obvious exhaustion and lingering mental strain, the alien met Hyunwoo's eyes directly. My people have a saying, Threen said. The heaviest burdens are carried by those strong enough to bear them alone. For 200 years, humans have walked alone, carrying a burden too heavy for others to share. We made you bear it in silence, calling it a privilege while we hid in our comfortable partnerships. Forgive us. There's nothing to forgive, Hyunwoo replied. You didn't know, but we could have trusted you, could have been honest about our fears instead of hiding behind lies. Threen extended one long limb in what Hyunwoo recognized as a gesture of respect. When this crisis is over, if we survive, things must change. Before Hyunwoo could respond, Jiwon's voice came through on all comm channels, urgent and afraid. All personnel, this is Council intelligence. Long-range sensors have detected the main Velshari invasion fleet entering the system. This attack on the station was just a scouting operation, a probe to test our defenses. The real war is about to begin. The aftermath of the station attack left everyone shaken but alive. Council security had managed to contain the possessed delegates in sealed sections, while scientists worked on extraction methods. But the respite was temporary. Long-range sensors showed the Velshari fleet approaching. Hundreds of ships carrying millions of parasites, ready to infect the galaxy once again. Ambassador, Sora called for an emergency council session within hours of the attack's end. Hyunwoo stood guard as delegates filed into the temporary assembly hall, watching their faces. Many looked at the human guards with new understanding, no longer hiding their discomfort, but openly acknowledging it. The truth about humanity's weaponization could no longer be hidden, not after hundreds of delegates had experienced human minds firsthand during the rescue operations. The chamber filled quickly. Representatives from all major species attended, knowing that what happened in the next hours would determine the galaxy's fate. High Chancellor Vaiktil, the Carusian who led the council, opened the session with 4 arms spread in a gesture of somber acknowledgement. We stand at the edge of extinction, Vaiktil said, his translated words carrying through the chamber. The Velshari have returned, and we all know now what that means. But before we discuss military preparations, we must address the truth that recent events have exposed. He turned to face the human delegation directly. 200 years ago, the Council made a choice. We discovered Earth and found in humanity a weapon against our greatest enemy. We manipulated your development, orchestrated your integration into our society, and deployed you as unknowing shields against the Velshari threat. We called it the Devourer Protocol, and we kept it secret from you for 2 centuries. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Many aliens already knew this, but hearing it stated officially made it real in a different way. We told ourselves it was necessary, Victil continued, that the survival of trillions justified deceiving billions. We disguised our quarantine of your people as a privilege, made you walk alone while we hid from the discomfort your minds caused us. We used you as weapons while pretending to honor you as allies. Ambassador Sora stood. Her voice was steady but cold. You're confessing your crimes, High Chancellor. That's a start. But confession without consequences is just words. What happens now? That depends on humanity, Victil said. The Vel-Shari are coming. Without human help, the galaxy will fall within months. But we have no right to ask for your help, not after what we've done. So I will not ask. Instead, I will offer you a choice. He activated a holographic display showing Earth and its surrounding colonies. You may leave. Take your people back to your home systems. We will seal your borders, ensure the Vel-Shari cannot reach you. You can survive in isolation while the rest of us fall. It is a better fate than we deserve to offer, but it is yours if you want it. The chamber fell silent. Every alien present waited for humanity's response. Hyunwoo watched Ambassador Sora, seeing her struggle with the weight of speaking for an entire species. I need to consult with Earth's government, Sora said, but I can tell you what I believe their answer will be. We're not leaving. Why not? Asked a Thrancian delegate. We lied to you, used you, feared you. Why would you fight for us? Sora smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. Because despite everything, we're here now. We know the truth now. And humans don't abandon people who need help, even people who wronged us. But there are conditions. Name them, Victil said. First, no more lies. Full transparency about everything related to the Vel-Shari, the Devourer Protocol, all of it. Second, Earth gets full voting rights in all Council decisions, equal to any other member species. Third, and most important, we're done walking alone. That caused surprised reactions throughout the chamber. Aliens looked at each other in confusion. Hyunwoo understood immediately and felt pride swell in his chest. You kept us isolated because our minds cause you discomfort, Sora continued. You built an entire social structure around avoiding close contact with humans. But if you want our help in this war, that ends today. We renounce the solitary walk privilege. From now on, humans will integrate fully into Council society, including the partnership protocols. But the mental intrusion, a Veluxian delegate protested. The psychological strain of being near unshielded human minds, it's agonizing for us. I know, Sora said. I watched aliens suffer that pain while my people saved them from possession yesterday. But here's the truth you need to accept. That discomfort is training. Every minute you spend near a human, enduring the broadcast of our consciousness, you're building mental resilience. You're learning to withstand the kind of psychic pressure the Vel-Shari use. By the time their main fleet arrives, every alien who has partnered with a human will be stronger, more resistant to possession. Hyunwoo saw understanding dawn across the chamber. The human mind's aggressive broadcast wasn't just a weapon against the Vel-Shari. It was armor for those willing to train with it. Fleet Commander Nari stood and added her voice. I propose the Shield Integration Protocol. We pair human volunteers with alien volunteers, starting with short exposure periods and gradually increasing. Yes, it will be uncomfortable. Yes, it will take time to adapt. But it's the only way to prepare the galaxy for what's coming. This is asking too much, a Carusian delegate said. The psychological strain, the mental violation of having human thoughts in our minds, is nothing compared to having Vel-Shari parasites consume your consciousness entirely, Bino interrupted. The security officer had taken a position near the human delegation. You've lived in comfort for 150 years, protected by humans you kept at arm's length. Now the protection needs to go both ways. We shield you from possession. You learn to endure the cost of that shield." Diplomat Threen rose from his seat. Hyunwoo recognized him immediately, the Veluxian who had experienced his thoughts during the rescue. Threen walked slowly to the center of the chamber, and Hyunwoo noticed he was deliberately approaching the human delegation. "I volunteer," Threen said. "I request formal partnership with Captain Hyunwoo Kong." The chamber erupted in shocked conversation. A Veluxian volunteering to partner with a human was unprecedented. Even with the crisis looming, the idea terrified most aliens. But Threen continued speaking, his voice carrying over the noise. "Yesterday, I experienced Captain Kong's consciousness directly. It was painful, overwhelming, like standing in a storm of thoughts and emotions. But I also saw his courage, his determination to protect beings he didn't even know. I felt his confusion about why we feared him, his sadness at walking alone for so long. And I understood something crucial. He turned to face the assembly. Humans walk alone not because they are cruel or dangerous by choice, but because we made them bear a burden in isolation. They broadcast their minds because that's how human consciousness works, but we punished them for it instead of adapting to it. If we want to survive the Velshari, we need to stop treating humans as weapons and start treating them as the partners they should have been from the beginning." More aliens stood. A Carusian diplomat, a Threnchian scientist, a Kelthian military officer. One by one, volunteers came forward, requesting human partners. Some were motivated by duty, others by guilt, but many were driven by genuine desire to bridge the gap that had existed for 2 centuries. Hyunwoo stepped forward and extended his hand to Threen. The Veluxian took it, and Hyunwoo felt the alien's mind flinch from the renewed contact with human consciousness. But Threen held on, enduring. "It won't be easy," Hyunwoo warned. "Being near me all the time, feeling my thoughts constantly." "Nothing worth doing is easy," Threen replied. "And I would rather walk with you in discomfort than walk away in comfort while the galaxy burns." Over the next hours, the Council hammered out the details of the SHIELD integration protocol. Hundreds of aliens volunteered for human partnerships. Training programs were established. Medical teams prepared to monitor the physiological effects of extended human exposure on various species. Earth's government contacted and briefed on everything. Agreed to Sora's terms and pledged full support. Commander Nuri began coordinating the military response, designing defense strategies that incorporated human shield positions with alien fleet formations. The plan was bold and had never been tested on this scale, but it was their best chance. 3 days later, the Velshari fleet arrived at the system's edge. Sensors counted over 300 capital ships, each carrying enough parasites to infect entire worlds. The fleet moved with eerie coordination, a unified consciousness bent on consuming everything in its path. But they found something different from what they had expected. The Council's defensive formations included humans integrated throughout every ship, every station, every defensive position. And surrounding those humans were aliens who had trained for days to endure human consciousness. Their minds now more resilient than ever before, Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of a Council warship, Threen beside him at a tactical station. The Veluxian still flinched occasionally from the mental pressure of Hyunwoo's proximity, but he was adapting faster than anyone expected. Around them, mixed teams of humans and aliens worked together with growing coordination. "They're deploying possession ships," the ship's captain announced, "attempting to establish telepathic networks with our fleet." But the Velshari attacks hit the human shields and shattered. Where before the parasites could spread through telepathic networks unopposed, now they encountered the chaotic broadcast of human minds at every junction. And the aliens who had trained with humans no longer collapsed from the mental pressure. They held firm, their minds stronger for the discomfort they had learned to endure. The battle raged for hours. Ships were lost, lives were sacrificed. But the integrated defense held. Every time the Velshari tried to establish a foothold, human consciousness disrupted them. Every time they tried to possess key personnel, they found minds toughened by exposure to humanity's aggressive thought patterns. As dawn broke over the station, 3 days later, the Velshari fleet retreated. Their losses had been catastrophic, their infection tense failures. The galaxy had held, not through the power of any single species, but through the strength of partnership. Hyan Wu stood with Threen on an observation deck, watching the enemy ships flee. The Veluxian looked exhausted but alive, his mind still struggling with the constant presence of human consciousness nearby, but growing more comfortable with each hour. "How do you feel?" Hyun-Woo asked. "Like I've been fighting a storm for 3 days," Threen admitted. "Your thoughts still push into mine constantly. I doubt that we'll ever be comfortable. But I also feel stronger. My mind has adapted, built defenses not against you, but around you. And the strangest thing is, I'm beginning to understand the patterns of your thoughts. They're not random chaos. They're just so different from how we think." Hyun-Woo smiled. "Welcome to being human adjacent." Other integrated pairs joined them on the observation deck. Humans and aliens standing together, no longer separated by fear and misunderstanding. The discomfort remained. The mental strain of partnership was real. But so was the bond forming between species who had finally learned to stand side by side. Ambassador Sora arrived with High Chancellor Viktil. The Carusian leader looked at the assembled pairs and made a gesture of deep respect with all 4 arms. "For 200 years, we gave you the privilege of walking alone because we feared what you were," Viktil said. "Now you walk with us because you finally understand who you are. Not weapons, not shields, partners." Hyun-Woo looked at the faces around him, human and alien alike. They had saved the galaxy, not by keeping humans isolated, but by finally bringing them together with everyone else. The road ahead would be difficult. The Velshari would return, and there would be more battles. But for the first time in 2 centuries, humanity wouldn't face it alone. And perhaps more importantly, the galaxy wouldn't face it without humanity. They stood together on the observation deck as more ships arrived. More volunteers coming to join the SHIELD integration program. The age of humanity walking alone had ended. The age of humans and aliens learning to walk together, bearing each other's burdens despite the difficulty, had begun. It wasn't the privilege the Council had given them. It was the partnership humanity had claimed for itself.